am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and today we're going to play with a fun single ply yarn. This yarn is Fluffy, which is upside down, from indiedyer.com. It is a light, super bulky weight yarn with 90 yards per 125 grams. It is single ply and 75% superwash merino wool, 25% nylon. It is so soft, and I hesitated for a moment because I was like, oh, it would be really fun to glaze this, just because glazing works so well on single ply yarns. Oh, maybe we will do that. You guys, I'm going back and forth and back and forth. Maybe we should glaze it. I was planning on doing like a shoeboxy thing to get some like bright neons. And you know what? We just might have to add a pink glaze on top of that. I think that is exactly what we have to do. Oh man, I'm just hesitating because I'm like, well, that wasn't the plan. Especially because the dyes I'm going to be adding aren't measured, but we have a new plan. I'm going to add some zip ties onto the yarn to act as an extra tie to avoid getting tangles. So I'm still planning on doing my shoebox technique for the base layer, which is basically where I'll cold process the yarn. I'll set up, oh my gosh, it's a little bit of sun up here. I'll set up the yarn and dye in a shoebox with some acid, and we'll let it sit for 24 plus hours. Now I'm planning on adding some neons here, so maybe it'll need a little more time. Now normally, after I cold process dye our yarn, the thing I like to do after that is steam set it. So that way I can have confidence that things are very well set. But instead of steam setting it, we are gonna glaze it. And of course, the colors that we have on the bottom, because I'm planning on using fluorescent lemon and fluorescent safety orange. Those two colors could be bleeders, so we could get back staining from that as well. And so I'm gonna need to keep that in mind as we go about everything, but I think that we should end up with something completely beautiful. Now, this yarn is not being particularly absorbent, and since I do want to get some coverage with our colors, with our neons that we're adding on here, I'm gonna go ahead and pre-soak it for, gosh, let's go ahead and do an hour. I think that that's probably a good idea. And then we'll pop back in. I love when high twist yarns sort of like curl on themselves like that. I don't know, it just amuses me and I find it pretty. Okay, we are going to transfer our yarn into a shoebox. Like here, I just have it a little bit scrunched. Oftentimes I'll go ahead and measure out 8 cups of water to add in here. Today, I'm gonna add enough water to cover the yarn, because we're gonna bring the dyes, we're gonna work them through. It's gonna be okay if there's some white left behind. But let me go and grab the colors for our first layer. Now, the glazing technique that I am going to want to do on this yarn, we have no acid in here yet, is going to work if we have contrast between the color of the glaze itself, which I plan to do as a pink, and the colors we're having on the underlayer. Now, this is some fluorescent lemon, and you know, I thought I was gonna use up a lot of what I had in here, and adding it in, I don't think I'm gonna use it all up, because look at that depth of color we are getting from just a little bit. Now, you probably with the glaze would have the most contrast when you are using, for example, like doing the glaze over white than you would, as I bring in some fluorescent safety orange, than you would if you're doing it over a color. And if I were to go ahead and use like a dark color like black, that would give us even more contrast than the colors that I'm adding here. Now, even with these colors, we could end up seeing some glazing in here just with these colors. It's unlikely, but it is technically possible. Just because the single ply yarn, the plies are so thick, we have things not moving very much, it is a possibility. I will admit I thought I was going to use these up. I think for each of these, I forget how much, it was like a 1/4 teaspoon of dye filling up the whole container. So yeah, it's concentrated, but still you can see that I used very little. I think that there's like 300 milliliters or something in one of these containers. No, I think there's like 113 milliliters. I don't know. We still got a lot more of these colors. But that's fine. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tablespoons of white vinegar. This is a lot of acid for what is likely around 8 cups of water. The reason for adding so much, as I sort of like work both the dyes through and the acid through, the reason why we're adding so much is because these are fluorescent colors. Now, the fluorescent safety orange probably has fluorescent fuchsia and the fluorescent lemon in it. So it's got more of that yellow pigment, but both of those are pigments that take a little bit more time to bind. Now, I could have done this outside of a shoebox for sure. And there are many times when I go ahead and dye yarn in a shoebox that I decide to like lift and move things around and blend the colors together. Here we have more of like almost a gradient kind of thing. And really it all depends on my mood and whatnot. But now I'm gonna go ahead and set this aside for at least 24 hours, maybe a little longer. It's a Friday, so I could wait the whole weekend before we go ahead and do our glazed layer. There could be some color left behind in here, but some amount of the color will strike to our yarn. Both of these colors are ones that I've done cold process techniques for. It just happens to be fall instead of summer. And in the summer, if I take it outside, it can get a little bit warm, but the inside of my house is like 65 degrees. So I'll see you in a couple of days. A little over 24 hours later, and I'll show you this as we remove it in a moment. I'm gonna leave the cover on for now as we set up our glazing bath. In this 12-quart pot, I have 24 cups of water, and I'm gonna add a bit over 300 milliliters of white vinegar. This is a 300 milliliter beaker, and I filled it up sort of to the brim. And if I was smart, I would have looked up how much deep magenta I used the last time I tried to glaze with it, and then made my decision from there. But what I'm gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and use 50 milliliters of this 1% stock solution. So that means we have the equivalent of a ½ gram of dye for 200 grams of yarn. And we have enough of it. Now you can see that the dye, oh crap. The power just blinked. Okay, well you can see that the dye is looking a little bit opaque. That is because this is a color that doesn't really stay in solution super well, but it does still bind super fast and does give a good secure color. I'm a little nervous the power is gonna go out again. Well, okay, we better get on this, huh? Okay, so our color is beautiful. It is bright. Ooh, should I bring over? I should show. We are very, very fluorescent. Oh my gosh. I'm trying to look at the monitor and you can barely see it because it is so, so bright. Even the orange is pretty bright, but yeah, it is very, very fluorescent. And our deep magenta is very much not. You can see the reflection of the light, but not our fluorescence. Okay, so the way I like to set up my glazing as I remove the yarn from this dye bath And there's still a little bit of water in it, but most of it's left behind. And just to show, the yarn sort of looks like this. We don't have a ton of that intermediate color. Am I on camera? There we go. It's very, very beautiful. We are going to take the yarn, bring it over to the dye bath, sort of dunk, raise up, dunk again, and that's it. That is all we are gonna do. I'm gonna take this over to the stove and we're gonna start heating it up. The reason for doing some movement at all is so that way the color can get distributed all over the skein, because if I just plopped it in, it's possible there would be some yarn in the center that would get no color. There's a hint of orange in here, but otherwise all of that color is in our yarn. Some of it may bleed out as we start heating things up, but I'm gonna go and start cleaning everything up. And we're just looking very, very, very pink right here. I'm gonna poke that in a little bit, but we are going to now heat this for an hour. The reason why I've picked an hour is that, well, if I had 32 cups of water, it would take about 30 minutes to heat up, and then that gives us 30 minutes on the heat. And so even though there's only 24 cups, it should heat up and get to like a light simmer in less than 30 minutes. Why not have that time on the timer? That should do no harm to our yarn or anything. And so that is what we're gonna do. You know, and I'm curious. Okay, hey, we can see through the surface a little bit more, especially over there. I see some glazing happening already. Ah! You could really see with the fluorescence, because the fluorescence is like making the yarn light up. But you see how there's like this halo, this like shallow layer of pink over some of that yellow? That's a glaze! Yay, yay, yay. Okay. But other areas of the pot do not immediately appear super fluorescent, maybe a little bit. But there's just so much more pigment in the water in between us and the yarn. So we'll see if there's fluorescence later or not. It's very pink right now. Things are looking mighty pink. But guess what? Guess what? Guess what? If I bring this over, not only do we see the fluorescence, but in a lot of the areas, oh man, can you see like specifically right there? I don't know. But in a lot of the areas you can see the pink halo. Oh man. I don't know how obvious it'll be under white light. Oh man. Okay. Woo, hot. Okay, if they're hot, just leave them out for a sec. Wiggle it. Oh, I see a glaze. Oh man, I think I'd be hard pressed to say that it was like orange and yellow underneath it. Oh, but I feel it. Okay. I am going to need to let this cool, because with the steam, it's hard to see, but look right there. Like, we got a glaze. Like, it's very pink heavy, but like, look in there. Oh, I'm so happy. So happy. Okay, we're gonna let this yarn cool completely. The dye bath has a hint of yellow in it. Some color did come back out clearly, but we're gonna let it cool before we can wash it. Now that we're not steamy, just look at that. Oh, the color's on the outside. You see the inside. Now, there are some areas on here that feel less obviously glazed. I'm going to add some dish soap. The yarn has cooled off completely. There's some areas that feel more solid, but when you look closer, especially as we move it, you feel those other colors underneath. And so that is what this two-layer approach can do for you. Now, and there's no bleeding. This is amazing. Now, I had someone ask me if you could do your glaze first and then add another color. Absolutely. It's just a little bit harder to see what's happening, because if I did this pink glaze over white and then went and over dyed it, I would need to wash the yarn first to remove some of that acid. So that way when I go ahead and add the other color, it'll sink in further. And so, I don't know, it's worth keeping in mind. But you see the glaze more on the yellow side than you do on the orange. Just because the contrast is better. But anyway, I'm gonna go put this through my spin dryer, hang it up to dry, and we'll take a peek at the finished yarn. This yarn is so cool. I am obsessed with it. Which I promise just like burst into my head. And I don't even know if that's a word from the movie. But oh my gosh. I know this yarn has nothing to do with Wicked, but I'm leaving it in. Just look at the glaze. I would say where it's over the orange, probably, would be my guess. It looks more just like pink. You don't see the undercolor as much. Maybe where it's over the yellow, we feel the yellow. I could be wrong. That could be the orange. I have moved the zip ties since drying the yarn. But you can really see here how the pink is just on the outside of the yarn. If we give the strand a little untwist, you can see some of that undyed area that didn't take the color. It is uneven, but also all over. Oh my gosh, I love it. Okay, you know that I have it laid out proper. I think that was the yellow. This was our orange, which also has good contrast. You can still see a bit of a difference in there. And then the blend, which was less saturated, is the area in the middle. But, oh, I love it. Now, this yarn, you can see why I almost thought it was 2-ply. There's like a waviness to it, right? That almost seems like there were 2 plies sort of spun together. But like if I untwist it, there aren't. I think it's just the way that the twist is in the yarn, which it's funny because it didn't feel like a single ply, which I don't remember what I thought of this the very first time I dyed it. I adore the way this turned out with the glaze. But now, of course, we have to bring in the black light. Oh, this is so cool. Because the glaze is not fluorescent, but the core is, you see the darkness on top of the core, which gave us the coolest way to ever see a glaze like in progress. And it's funny, in the middle area where we had less of our dye, there's a little bit less fluorescence. It's definitely the brightest at either end, which had most of the color. I'm just excited because this is the first time that like the fluorescence, and even with all the lights on here on, you can really see it. This is the first time that the fluorescence has really, really benefited me during the dyeing process. Because then I knew it was working because I could see it work. Do you remember earlier in the video when I was like on the fence about the glaze and I was like gonna dye this neon yarn and then I was like, man, I really should glaze it. I don't know how much of that was in video, but in my head, I was just gonna dye some pretty yellow and orange neon yarn. But then realizing that this base was gonna be the perfect candidate to redo a glaze with deep magenta, I am so glad I went for it. So glad. These happen to be the last 2 skeins of fluffy that I have. I don't know if I've mentioned that it is so soft. Like this yarn is unbelievably soft and I'm way more in love with it now. And I liked it when I first dyed it, but I'm way in love with it right now after this technique. It was perfect for this. And so I may have to get more at some point because I just love the way that this turned out. And it's so unbelievably soft. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits. I love glazing yarn, I love neons, and I love exploring so many different things with color and yarn. So please subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. And even if you don't have a black light, fluorescence can be fun. It is brighter in natural light. And I mean, they give us a really great ability to contrast for something like a glaze. And I think we have even more contrast here between all the colors than we would have if I had just used a regular bright orange or bright yellow. If you love the yarn I dye, go and check out the ChemKnits Creations Etsy shop. It's filled with hand-dyed yarn that has been featured in my videos. And so you can bring home some yarn and support the content you enjoy watching here at the same time. You can find links to everything down in the video description. And actually, If you expand the whole video description, I always have a bunch of links and affiliate links to different items, tools, and equipment and yarn that I use in my videos. And even further down, I have chapters, but within there I have notes where I keep track of the amount of dye that I used, if I measured, the dye colors and other details. So that way, if you're wanting to recreate something I've done in a video, you can obviously rewatch the video, but you can also check there for a very crude outline. And I reference those all the time. But anyway, thank you so much for watching.